Hi, folks. Welcome to our Maunday, Thursday Fireside Chat for 2022. It is an incredibly cold evening here in Colorado. It's like 40 degrees and windy. Sandy and I just came in from our walk. She is happy to be by the fireplace right now. Hey, and let me just start by saying, folks, I need to confess something. It's Maundy, not Maunday, Thursday. Mona graciously and kindly corrected me years ago on that, and Mona, I owe you one. But what is Maundy Thursday? Well, Maunday is from the Latin mandatum, which means commandment. So what we're technically talking about is Commandment Thursday. And the commandment one comes, well, from John chapter 13. John writes about what happens in the upper room on that Thursday night for 4 chapters, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 5 chapters. Holy cow. Anyhow, the commandment comes when Jesus says this: "A new commandment I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." And Jesus not only talked love, because the commandment to love one another is one of those commandments that sounds great, but it's really hard to figure out how to make it work. Jesus gave a children's sermon, an illustration. The start of chapter 13 of John, Jesus picked up a basin and a towel. These are the ones we used to use at church, and started to wash his disciples' feet. Now, we have to understand biblically that foot washing was the task that got given to the lowest of low. If there was somebody who had no position, no power, no anything, they ended up washing feet. Because unlike church foot washing, where, I gotta tell you the truth, when I washed feet at church, I saw some really nice fresh pedicures. People took really good care of their feet before they came to a foot washing service. But back in Jesus' day, they didn't like rinse before they put the stuff in the dishwasher. You know what I mean? They came in, kicked off the sandals, and somebody had to scrub off, open-toed, walking through streets full of dust. And let's just say there weren't a lot of people running around with plastic bags cleaning up after their animals back then. That's what foot washing involved. I know. Jesus did that. That's how he illustrated what loving looked like. Loving really looks like serving. Looks like taking care of people. And here's the tricky bit. Quite often, it means taking care of them when they're not really all that lovable, when they're really having a hard time. Now, what happens with loving is so often we make it external. We find it easy to love people who are lovable. But the commandment to love, if it's based on foot washing, means we're going to love when it's particularly hard to love. So our motive can't come from outside of ourselves. And here Jesus shows us how it works. Right before he picks up the basin and the towel and starts to wash his disciples' feet, John reveals this about Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, that he'd come from God and was returning to God. I think it was that internal knowledge that all things were under his power, from God to God. That's what motivated Jesus to wash the disciples' feet. Jesus knew who he was. He'd come from God. He was the Son of God. He knew where he was going. He was going to return to the Father, sit at the right hand, all the things we say in the Creed. And he knew he'd been given power, that the Father had put all things under his power. So knowing that, knowing position, knowing power, knowing identity, Jesus is able to look at his disciples and wash their feet. And let's keep in mind, Jesus knows what's going on, because the next thing after foot washing is when the disciples have that discussion and Jesus says, "Yeah, I know one of you is going to betray me." Jesus washed Judas' feet, knowing Judas was going to betray him. Jesus washed Peter's feet, knowing Peter was going to deny him, because later on that night he says, "By the way, Peter, 3 times you're going to deny me before the rooster crows twice." Yeah. And it happens. He washes everybody's feet, knowing that they are going to use those same feet to run away from him when he's arrested. So he has these men who are going to deny him, who are going to betray him, who are going to run away from him. And Jesus says, let me love them. Let me wash their feet. Because foot washing involves doing an unpleasant thing and loving unlovable people. That can be a hard thing to do. But Jesus gives us the same tools. We too have our identity, our destination, and our giftedness. We know who we are. We are the sons and daughters of God, adopted into his family in the waters of baptism. When we come to faith in Jesus, God brings us into his forever family. We know where we're going. Jesus says, I've gone, I have prepared a place for you, and I will come and take you to be home with me. We know where we're going. And we know our giftedness. The Bible reminds us that the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead, that same Spirit lives inside you and me. So when we have to do the hard work of loving somebody who is hard to love, foot washing love, well, we don't have to wait for circumstances to change before we love. We don't have to wait for God to give people who are hard to love a personality transplant before we can love them. We start loving right where we are, because it's not based on them. It's based on us. We have the same motivation Jesus did. Jesus knew the Father had put all things under his power. He'd come from God. He was going to God. You and I, we have power from God. We know where we're from. We know where we're going. We belong to God. As a result, we have the power to love. Because in the same way that Jesus chose to love unlovable disciples and wash their feet, Jesus still loves us. And we're not much more lovable. That's why he went to the cross, to win salvation for us, to forgive us, to bring us into God's forever family. John starts off the whole upper room by saying, having loved his own, Jesus loved them to the very end. It's in that same love that we live. So it's Maundy Thursday, Commandment Thursday, and the commandment is this: love one another. As I have loved you, love one another. As I have loved you means we don't love because the other person's lovable. We love because God loved us. I hope you have a great night. Remember, tomorrow night, Good Friday, 7 o'clock, we're worshiping at the sanctuary. Then Easter, 7 o'clock, traditional sunrise service, Easter breakfast at 8, egg hunt at 9, festival service at 10. Blessings.